Hello guys, it's Randall with BitRaged. So I want to do an update on the Bitcoin video that I dropped 2 days ago, explaining why I did not believe that the price correction was actually over at that point. And a few of you have commented and asked if my opinion has changed, if I had an update. So I want to do a little update here. I also wanted to go back and talk about support and resistance a little bit more, because there's a lot of questions on that, and explain maybe a few points that maybe were missed. Hopefully answer some more of your questions. We answered a couple of them last night, but we wanted to hit a few more today. So there is a tendency among a number of people who are writing articles and doing videos to call what we are in right now a bull market. Now, I want to make it clear that we're not in a bull market. We are still in a bear market. If you look at all indicators and volume and the trend lines, we're still in a bearish market. And honestly, anyone who tells you that we're now in a bullish market doesn't have a clue what they're talking about. So I would run from them, because they really do not understand charts or markets, because we're not in a bullish market. That is not to say that we have not seen a bullish attempt. We have seen a bullish attempt, or a bullish attempt to break out. That doesn't mean anytime you see green that you're suddenly in a bullish market. The overall trend, the overall sentiment is very bearish, and it continues to be very bearish, and all the indications continue to be, well, not all, but the majority are still bearish. Now, I drew some lines here, and you don't really need to understand what these mean if you don't, other than it creates a box, and as you'll see, we're getting down to this narrow area here where we have to either break out or break through. And we've been hitting heavy resistance in this area. I mean, I think we went up to 86.25 was the high. So there's heavy resistance right below 9,000, heavy resistance in the upper 8,000s. Just very hard to break through. We've tried multiple times, and you'll notice even here we hit up to 86.50, we hit 86.25, we hit 85.75. So really trying to break through there, and we just really cannot do it. The bulls just do not have the power. They're being exhausted. So to break through and actually see the bulls take over, we have to break through this line here, and we have to break through into the 9,000s, which is the next major resistance line. The problem is we haven't even broke through this resistance, and we can't. So that's what we would have to see if we were to see this trend reverse itself, but everything is still pointing to another drop back down to retest the support line. Now that brings me to my first point here. Well, actually there's two questions, and we're going to try and answer them together. The first one was, can you define support level, how to determine a support level? And we kind of talked about that last night in our video. I kind of talked about it in the first video as well, but I wanted to do maybe a little bit broader explanation here. The second question, which goes along with it, is how come we have to test certain levels again in order to move up? I totally see what you're saying, and it makes sense, but why do people feel the need to sell back down to those levels to retest them, rather than letting the whole retesting go and just allow things to move up? Now, in a perfect environment, everything would just go up, right? In a perfect environment, everything would just go up. But then we wouldn't have a market, because a market is things going up and down. It's an argument between buyers and sellers, which is basically what creates the environment to be able to make money. So why do people feel a need to sell down to a support level? Well, honestly, there's not a conscious decision for people to sell down to a certain level. It's a belief. It's a belief that this is the level at which I actually believe, and when I say I'm trying to explain what the sellers or the buyers are believing here is the buyers are saying, at this level, I really believe Bitcoin is worth this, and I'm going to buy all in at this point. And when you have a support level like that, it's hard for sellers to break through that. So sellers will sell right down to it. And when they get to that point, the buyers jump in and they say, listen, as much as you're going to sell off, we're buying everything. That's what a support level is. A strong support level, that's what all it is that no matter what the sellers are throwing out, the buyers are just going to pick it all up. And when you have a really good support level, and that's why in like Forex you'll see perfect W's, because it'll bounce, it'll drop down, and it'll do a double test. It will retest that support line, and it will go up from there, because basically everything you're going to sell off, we're buying it up, because we do not believe as buyers that it should go below that point. So our faith is at that level, and that's what a support level is. Now, when a support level breaks, it just simply means, so this would be where you test the support, it holds, and you go up, and usually you'll see a nice climb, a nice spike off from a W pattern. Now, I'm digressing slightly, but I want to explain why W makes sense, because I know some people were like, W's don't make sense. They do totally make sense. It's market structure. So you have support. It's not solid yet, but it looks like it's good support. It goes up. We have resistance. Okay? It drops back down. It tests. This is solid support. And then it goes up and it breaks through resistance. So not only do you hit twice and have a confirmation twice that the buyers are not allowing it to go below this point. There's so much faith at this point that it should not go below this point that it's not going to. It bounces up, it breaks through resistance without any struggle or very little struggle, and that's 3 points of confirmation that we're now in that bullish run. So that's why W's make so much sense. If you have a M, it's basically the opposite. And it's the opposite. You'd have a double top, but you have resistance on the top, and it breaks through this support. So this was support. It should have been support, but it breaks through it right here. So it crashes right through that support line. Now, when you see an M pattern, usually at the end of this M pattern is usually a good point to buy in. There's usually a potential to buy in and make some money because you've broken through a support, which generally means you're going to come back up to that support line. So hopefully that kind of maybe explains market structure a little better and what I was talking about with the W's and the M's. Okay, so I kind of forgot what I was talking about before I got sidetracked with market structure. You have resistance up here, all right, heavy resistance. You have support. It's needs to be retested, but it's looking like it's where the buyers right now believe it should not go below. And you basically have this box where it has to do something. It has to break out. I mean, yeah, we can continue on in, as Joe had mentioned, kind of not really making any progress and wobbling along on the chart, not going up or not going down, but honestly, the way everything is looking, we really need to see a breakout or a breakthrough. So we're going to either have to see it do this, or do this, or do that. And it doesn't have to be straight lines, but that gives you an idea that we actually really have to see bulls or bears really take control, because while bears are still in control, they are weakening. And bulls are very weak right now, and there's not, and that's the other point I want to make. I was talking about, Okay, support and resistance. So why do people sell off to a certain point? It's usually panic is why people actually sell off. They see everything collapse and they're like, if I have to get out here, I want to get out and at least not lose all my money. So I'm going to get out and not lose completely. So they sell off to a certain point, and it's fear. But the buyers, on the other hand, are waiting till a certain point where they believe that the market should be, and they're going to buy in at that market. And when you have a certain point where the buyers are buying in mass, where they believe in the price, that's where you see big spikes is off from those points. So right now we're seeing volume drop off. We're really seeing the bulls weaken in volume. We're not seeing the buyers coming in right now. There's not a strength in buyers. There's not a belief and faith in the point we're at right now. We need to retest it to restore faith for the buyers to buy back in. That being said, is it possible for us to go up to 9, 10,000? It is possible. It is possible to continue up without going back to retest this right away. If we do that, most likely what should happen is we are going to see a huge weakness. If that were to happen, we should see a huge weakness in bulls and it to drop significantly and probably plunge below the 6,000 line. Reason being, right now we're already weak and there's a significant sell-off between 9 and 11,000, probably 9 and 10.50. Significant sell-off for people who bought down here who want to sell off and make a profit. So you're going to see a lot of people who bought in here, if it makes it up that point without retesting, are going to sell off and it's going to start dropping again, and then you're going to get another panic sell. And it should, if that were to happen, it should drop through 6,000 or it should confirm that as support level and continue back up. So one of those things. That's somewhat supposition, but there's a good reason to believe that's what would happen. So the question was how to define support levels, how to determine support level. You can go across and just kind of look for support and just kind of draw and say, okay, that looks like support to me. I can actually prefer the drawing it. And you can just do it that way. And then when it comes through and it breaks through, then what was support, again, it becomes resistance. So we have, that's kind of, let's do that again here. So that area becomes a resistance area, and I know I drew that a little big, but because it was support at one time. So you can do it that way. You can also look at the volume coming in, and so what you can do is you can look at the volume and get a good idea of the sentiment of buyers and sellers. And when you see the volume drop off, it's a large indicator that there's a weakness coming in. So you can learn a lot from volume. I've mentioned that a number of times. Looking at volume, watching the order book. If you look in the order book, and let's say you're watching here, and you're like, okay, it's 82.69. Let's say down here somewhere there is someone has a ask for 1,000 Bitcoin, or there's 5 people selling 500 Bitcoin. Well, that becomes a block, right? And the same thing on this side, that becomes a block. So if you watch the order book and you see what's kind of going on, it can be interesting, and sometimes you can catch things. And what that would be is, depending on whether it's in the buy or the sell category, it would be resistance or support, right? So if you're looking at the order book and you look, and you're like, you get down to a certain point, there's like, oh, it goes from 0.01, 0.003, 1.9 to all of a sudden you see 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 in one sale. What you're seeing is buyers coming in at a certain point in this order book, which it isn't here, I'm just saying, at a certain point, buyers are coming in saying, listen, if it drops to this point, we're buying in, and we're buying in big. So if you see those large differences in the order book at a certain point, or you see, again, if you watch the visual of the volume coming in, it indicates where the market is trending towards. So that can be huge. Just paying attention to where buyers and sellers are is a really good way to tell support and resistance. It's a really great way to tell that. There was another question, I think Joe had mentioned it, but the question was kind of, how long is it going to take? 2, 3, 4, 5 days for this to recover? We don't know. We honestly really don't know. And nobody does, because we could get go sideways for a few days here. We could see a breakout or a breakthrough. I tend to think that within the next couple of days, we're really going to see one of those things happen, because we're just really tightening up here, and we're just really seeing a compacted resistance and support position that really has to break through. We're getting into a point where it's going to have to break through. Breakthrough or breakout, it's got to happen, in my opinion. So we don't know when, but it should be soon. And again, if it does break through and it goes up to $10,000, we should see that come back down and retest at a certain point here. Now, it doesn't have to, if it was to break out, it doesn't have to come back down to 6,000 to retest. It could make a new support here, and it could confirm that, and the buyers could rally behind that point and say, this is the new support, and it could hold. But right now, the reason we are still looking at retesting this is because the buyers are still lacking faith. The buyers are still lacking faith in buying above this point. And until the buyers have a renewed faith at a higher point, we still are going to be looking at this area for retest. Now, again, in Forex, you're going to see more perfect W's, not always in crypto. So don't expect it to have to hit 58, 56. All right, don't expect it to have to drop exactly down to that amount. Just look for in the 6,000 range is what I'm looking for, and just kind of watch the buyers coming in, watch the volume coming in, and decide based on that when it's going to turn around. That's going to give you a good idea once we actually get into that pattern. But this could actually still has the potential to make a decent W market structure, and so again, the next few days should be interesting. The other question that kind of went along with this was, doesn't it appear that people anticipate support line and anticipate a support line being retested and therefore begin to invest before that level is reached? This is true. This does happen. Again, it goes back to what I was just talking about, which is watching for the buyers coming in to indicate that we're going to push upward even if we have not retested that support line. So if you see the buyers come in and just push it back up when you have a position like this where there is a lot of indecision, then that would indicate that faith is coming in at a certain point for a new support level. So yeah, the buyers could anticipate and say, well, and it's not really anticipate as much as what usually happens is a fear of missing out. So they say, I don't really think it's going back down to that point. I really think it's going to turn around before that, so I'm buying in here. And when you have enough buyers saying that, you're not going to actually be able to retest that point because the buyers don't believe it's going to fall that far and they don't want to miss out. So that does happen. We're not at that point in this market for Bitcoin. It's not at that point. It could transition quickly and happen, but honestly, we're not at that point right now where that would happen. So we're still looking for a retest down in the 6,000 range. Anywhere in that range is where I'd be looking at. It may be even farther up, but again, we want to see a clear establishment of support. And once we establish support, the question was, how do you really know and define a support level? When you really, if it comes down it bounces off that. To establish this as a new support and a true foundation, we need to see a nice spike. A lot of buyers coming in with a lot of belief pushing this up, saying, we really believe this is where the price needs to be. That's not what we've had. It's like somebody might say, well, this is a support line, but you really don't have a lot of belief in that. There's not a good argument on the bull side for that to be a support level. Now, technically it is, but it's not a strong support because you just do not have the buyer's belief. So understanding markets is really there's a lot of faith going into this trading. Whether you're a buyer or seller, if you're a buyer, there is a faith that, okay, at a certain point, I'm buying in because I don't believe it's going below that point. And if you're a seller, there is a belief or a lack of faith in the market, however you want to put it, that at a certain point, there's resistance. And I really just do not believe it can go beyond this point as a seller. So I'm going to say, I'm going to sell at this point. I'm going to sell at this point because I really just don't believe it's going to go above that. And so that's basically the philosophy of buyers and sellers is at this point or at this point, it's my belief of where the price is going to go. And when you have the mass amount of buyers and the mass amount of sellers having a belief at a certain point or a specific area in price, which may be like 6,000 range or 6,000 to 6,500 or something, that becomes support. And the more buyers that come in at this point, the bigger and stronger that support becomes. So I hope that maybe answers some questions on support and resistance and how you define and understand a true support level. So somebody had mentioned that we need to retest the 1300 line. No, you don't have to retest that. All we have to do is set a good foundation in this area. We have dropped to this point, so we have to test this point. We have to establish a good foundation in this point. We don't have to worry about anything below if we can establish this. If we don't, if we break through, then we have to retest points below. And if we keep breaking through, yeah, we're going to retest all the way down to the bottom. But there is heavy support in this area between 6,000 and 5,000. Heavy support. There's heavy support in the 4,000, and there's support down in 3,000. So to actually drop to 1,300 would really be a stretch at this point. It's not something the market is setting itself up for. It's not something I really would foresee happening unless we saw some extremely bad news, such as the U.S. government banning crypto or something stupid like that. I do not really anticipate it going down that far. It could drop into 4,500 potentially at this point, maybe down to 4,000. But again, there is heavy buyer support in these areas. Heavy buyer support where it's basically going to just gobble up any sell orders that come in at that point. So any panic sells are just going to get eaten up. So to drop through that would take a significant effort from the sellers. So where are we headed over the next couple days? Again, I've mentioned this before, but we're really looking for either a W or we're looking to break out of this, which will give us a temporary climb probably into the 9,000-10,000 range, and then a drop back to look for support somewhere, because we still have to find support somewhere. If it's here or if it drops down and it's here, we still have to find it. And again, as I've been mentioning, and I keep harping on this point, the buyers are very, very weak right now. To get to this point looks like a fetch at this point. It looks far-fetched. It's possible to get a rush of volume in, a rush of buyers in. It's just not happening at this point. All right, so even right at this point, the low for the 4 hour is hovering right above 8,000. So we're about ready to break back into the 7,000s. If we break into the 7,000s, there's the potential to create another panic and a sell-off, which will probably put us down into the 6,000 range again. That's kind of what I'm still anticipating. There are some indicators that that may not happen. We may not get as far down as 6,000. We may end up farther up. And Joe had mentioned this in his video. The important point, again, that I keep trying to bring you back to is wherever you have the buyers coming in is where the support is going to be drawn. So if the mass of buyers are coming in at this point, that's where support is. That's where support is. And when you have more buyers coming in than sellers, you have a greater faith on the buyer's end, then it just consumes all the sell orders to the point where it overwhelms the sellers and it pushes the price back up. That's kind of what we're looking to see happen here. I'm still anticipating and waiting to break into the 6,000 range again, where I will be buying in. But again, we could be setting ourselves up for a true double bottom, which is what I'm hoping for, because that's going to be a very secure place to buy in. And whether you're short term or holding, it'd be a good place to buy in. It'd be a very secure place if we can have a double bottom in the 6,000 range. One last point I wanted to bring out. There's a few people that were calling, I believe, this a W. That's not a W. It's not. It's close, but it's not a W. And so if you're looking at that to be your new support level, it's not enough. You don't have enough buyer support for these to become actual support levels. Now, it could bounce back down, retest that, and get a huge level of support in this area, and that could become a new support. That could happen. These are not secure support points right at this point. They're just levels to look at. And again, we have huge resistance up here, which is really pushing against the price pretty heavily. So alright guys, this is kind of long, and I hope I was able to answer some questions that you guys had. There was probably a few more that I didn't get to in this video. Feel free to comment below and ask any other questions you might have, whether it be in regards to this Bitcoin correction or other forms of trading, maybe trading altcoins. Be happy to answer any questions you might have. Just one other thing I'll leave with you. I know a few of you had mentioned indicators. You want to know more about indicators. I had done a video talking about RSI. I actually really like RSI. What I do in my trading is I will set up a position that looks good, and I will read the charts, read everything, look for a really good position where it looks like a good place to buy in, and then I will look for confirmation in RSI. It's one of the things I do check. One thing you can look for in RSI, and it's pretty powerful, is divergence, and I've talked about this before. You can check my previous video on that. But that would be a divergence. It's basically the idea of a higher high on the price, but a lower high on the RSI, and that is definitely a divergence. And this is classically looked at as a signal, a bearish divergence signal, signifying that we should see another drop. Now, that is, again, at what, like I said before, everything's really pointing to this. You got really a lot of weakness in volume, a lot of indecision, heavy resistance, heavy support in this kind of a bottleneck situation where something has to break out. RSI divergence is telling us that we really should be expecting this to drop off a little bit here. How far? RSI doesn't really tell us that. I mean, you can make some good guesses, but it's just telling us that there's a good chance it's going to drop off. So you wanted some indicators. I know I didn't really explain it too much. I'm going to do a video on divergence for you soon, explaining bearish, bullish divergences and how to spot them and confirm them. But I thought that you might appreciate that there is a indication in RSI divergence for a reversal, and we should see it at least be something like that. That's what I'm expecting. Alright guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Again, please definitely comment below and let me know if you have any questions. Anything you need clarification on, I will do my best to answer those questions for you. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much again for your support. If you are not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and then hit the bell that pops up to ensure that you're notified of all future videos. We'll be dropping a number of trading videos over the next couple weeks, and you definitely will not be wanting to miss those. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and take care.